And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Happy Monday.
So are you a glutton for punishment, or what's the deal?
Me?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You trying to get pinched?
Oh, I forgot all about it.
He didn't wear any green today.
Where's your green, buddy?
Oh, yeah, shoes.
Okay. That's a cop-out.
Christian's
What do you mean
rolling
it's a cop-out?
the green
It's
sweatshirt.
much harder to find green shoes than it is
that a green jacket?
anything else. It's also a green jacket.
Okay. Never mind.
From my tournament win. The green jacket.
You guys know this. Holidays usually are just not that big a thing to me. Although
Sure.
I used to really like St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
But-
I don't like fun. I don't like happiness.
I know. And so, I forgot to wear green. What do you want from me?
You get pinched. Line up after the show, and everyone in the building gets to pinch you.
I'm surprised your daughters weren't on you about it.
Yeah.
Me too, actually.
Did your kids go to school without green on, and now they're going to be devastated because they get made fun of by the other kids?
Maggie, yes. I think Sadie, no.
Okay.
Because
They're not wearing green?
I think it was remembered on the way out the door.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Sure. Sounds
But
like you're lying about why you're not wearing
But
green now.
I had already left
okay.
with Maggie for daycare.
Okay.
And she was wearing rainbow, and I don't think there was much green in the rainbow.
Roy G. Biv.
Yeah, right. Real easy. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, ivy, violet.
All right. I should remember that.
Roy G. Biv, yeah.
There should be green in there.
Okay. I hope so. For her sake. It's not her fault.
It's Dad's fault.
You know, we even had like a corned beef and cabbage dinner on Saturday.
I had one of the best sandwiches of my life.
Corned beef involved?
Corned beef sandwich.
Oh, I love
with like coleslaw. It was at a barbecue place. It hit as well as any sandwich I've had in my life. It was so good.
Corned beef is amazing.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Corned beef is not just a once-a-year meal to me.
Okay. You're keeping them in business outside of the St. Patrick's crowd.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. I get it.
And then when you
Salty.
have leftovers, you throw it on some potatoes and some eggs the next day?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Sure. I get it.
Anyway. So hopefully everybody out there is enjoying St. Patrick's. Did most people celebrate it over the weekend, right?
I think so.
Christian went out with his beloved on Saturday, and
nice.
they had the tents up at all the places and all that. Was it packed?
It was a good time, yeah. There were a lot of people, but it was fun.
You know, this is how, when you transition from young to old at some point, Ben, yeah, it was packed. In Christian's world, that was a real positive for him.
Right.
At some point, that changes to where it's...
I never want to go out again.
Yeah, it was packed. Like, I had a great day skiing with my family at Deer Valley on Saturday.
Not because it was packed,
but
or was
it was
packed?
packed.
Yeah.
I mean, again, great day. But the fact that it was packed made it not as fun.
Yeah.
Although Deer Valley does a cool thing. You have to reserve the days you're going. So they have a limit at some point.
So it doesn't get overly crowded.
It doesn't get overly. Some other places are more crowded. So shout out to DV. You want to know something funny? Have you ever had Deer Valley chili?
No.
Christian?
Made of deer?
I was going to ask, do they have venison in it?
They have elk chili.
Okay.
And they have turkey chili. They're kind of famous for the turkey chili, but the elk chili is basically the same thing, but with elk. My daughter, my 7-year-old, this is how good the food is at Deer Valley. My 7-year-old does not like chili. She does not like most things, not mac and cheese. She's like, we're going to eat that chili today, right?
We getting the chili?
When are we getting the chili? Where's she recognizes the Silver Fork Lodge because she's like, that's where we get the chili.
The chili
Dad.
place.
That's the chili right there.
Oh, that's good. That's
It's
a
like,
win.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wish it didn't cost us like $1,000 a day up here. That'd be nice.
This is the most expensive bowl of chili.
Very pricey bowl of chili.
Yeah.
But my 7-year-old who likes nothing just inhaled a whole bowl.
Great.
She's never eaten a whole bowl of anything in her life.
Right. Well, good. That's a win.
But anyway, Christian going, Yeah, it was crowded. It was great. It was bumping.
Well, that's
I don't know.
what you're looking for on a holiday, you know?
Is
right?
it?
For
I
me-
feel like even when I go out for a beverage with my wife nights, if it's crowded, it's always like, oh, look how full the parking lot is. This is ridiculous.
There are some nights, like a random Saturday night, where it would be nice to go and just have a quaint,
A quaint
nice
experience, but that was not the experience you were looking for.
No, we had fun. My wife had fun. That's what matters. I was kind of babysitting.
You were the designated driver?
Yeah.
Good for you. All right. Well, there you go. Hopefully everyone, you have a good weekend, Ben?
I did. Worked. Went and saw Shane Gillis on Saturday night. It was funny.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
I was looking at tickets. Those were
I know a guy.
Is he an opera singer of some sort?
He is.
La Boheme?
He was the guy who famously got hired by SNL and then got fired by SNL before making his debut because of previous jokes he'd made, and has since hosted SNL twice.
So he was canceled and then uncanceled.
Correct.
Or fired and then uncanceled.
Yeah. He's kind of unwillingly or unwittingly become kind of the face of that.
So he's a joke person.
He's a jokester.
Was it good?
Yeah, it's funny.
Was it at Delta Center?
The opening guy was maybe the worst comedian I've ever seen in my life. It was crazy how bad this guy was. But Shane was great. Yeah.
What constituted bad?
Imagine if two 14-year-old boys sat together in a room and wrote an entire comedy sketch and didn't know how comedy worked. That's how I describe this guy.
Very juvenile?
Beyond juvenile and no like formula for how jokes are told. It was bizarrely bad. It was shocking.
Well, maybe that's his thing.
You come to Utah and you're like, I'm going to wow these people. There's a bunch of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm really going to shock these people. These people are human. They've been alive. They've seen movies. They've heard words before. I don't know what you think. This has never happened here in Utah.
But bombing is funny. Maybe that's the thing.
No, his whole thing was like, I'm going to make it so awkward that you can't help but laugh because like you're embarrassed to be hearing what you're hearing. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, I wouldn't
So
love that.
cringy.
I
Yeah,
got
it was
it.
awful. But Shane was funny. Shane's very funny. So forget that first guy. He was a clown. But
Yeah.
the next guy was great. To the point where I can't even find him on the internet. I can't even find who this person is. He's not a local guy either. I can't even find who this person is. So
I've seen a couple people bomb in stand-up comedy or whatever.
Yeah.
And it is funny. He's sad,
yeah.
but it is funny to watch somebody squirm out there like, oh, tough crowd. All right, well, that's good.
Yeah. So it was fun.
How long a set those guys do? Just like an hour?
He was done by 10. Show started at 8. He probably went on at like 8:45, 8:50. So yeah, 60, 70 minutes, something like that.
And then Sunday you had to write a post-game story with no comments.
Yeah, Will Hardy didn't talk after last night's game.
Nor did any of the players.
Well, there's nobody there to interview. Nobody's traveling to cover the team right now because they've lost 9 straight and are going to lose as many as they can.
Not that anybody ever thinks of me, but
Nor should they.
we had to tread water for so long waiting until we even got the news that he wasn't coming out.
Let me ask you this. Did you have Bryce Sensabaugh on Friday night? Did you wait for Bryce? You had Will.
We had Will.
And then I specifically requested Bryce because I said, you know what? I know the TV people and the radio people like to have a second interview.
Yeah, we did have Bryce. Yes, we did.
And he took forever. We pick Bryce because he comes out quickly. He took forever. So.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
But I did say, like, they almost were like, let's not get anybody. And I said, the people upstairs could use it. So I was thinking of you,
Hey,
actually.
look at you, Ben.
Just trying to help.
Way to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never seen a coach not do any sort of post-game press conference. Like, did the away media not want to? Like, usually you guys will go across the way and do the
Somebody
visiting
will ask
media.
a question.
Yeah,
or two,
right.
Yeah. No, apparently not.
Okay. Well, that was a real thing. And I guess, maybe nobody cared because the Jazz really, I don't even know. I asked the broadcast crew this after the game, and I don't usually like grandiose statements, but did you think that was the most uninteresting game of the season? I mean,
Up there.
the Timberwolves just beat them thoroughly, and it was like usually there's a run to make it close or something. Like I kept in the post game going back to the box score because usually this, Ben, you hosted post games, obviously you can usually pick out a half dozen interesting
Elements.
things,
Yeah.
interesting elements. Walker Kessler had 19 rebounds.
Yeah. He took 6 threes. That's kind of the interesting thing.
So outside of Walker Kessler, which we did spend a lot of time talking about Walker Kessler, it was just not. It wasn't even interesting from like a bad standpoint. It's not like they had anybody go out there and play poorly. It just was almost like non-factors across the board. Lowry played really well there for a minute, but he didn't play enough to really be any sort of factor. And you look down the way, I mean, Isaiah Collier had 5 turnovers, which I guess is kind of is a negative, but the team as a whole had 22.
Yeah. There's no value in this game. There's really, very little other than Friday night, Lowry Markkinen, because he only played the first half of the game, tried to get up as many shots as he could and tried to create his own shot and was like, let me toy with this. And clearly that was a prerogative from the Jazz to say hey, you've got 15 games left in the season. Maybe you play 10 or whatever. Why don't you see if you can create your own shot? You haven't done that much this year. Let's see at this point in the year if you can create your own shot. And Sunday, the prerogative was, let's see if we can get Walker Kessler shooting some threes over the last 10, 15 games of the year just to see how comfortable he is doing that and see if he can get up 2 a game next year, or 3 a game next year and see if that's feasible based on what happens over these last 12. So I'll be curious, is there a game where Cody Williams takes 15 shots and the Jazz just say, Cody, this is your game. We want to see what happens when you take 15 shots a game. We want you to know what that feels like so you can adjust next year to having to carry a bigger load of the offense because right now he, carries 0 load.
Non-factor, yeah.
So that's what I'm curious about. And also the fact of I get the outrage of tanking and I get the outrage of Walker Kessler being a healthy scratch on Friday night and not just DNP dressed DNP CD, and people were in my mentions who were gambling on the games. We're mad about that. But, don't gamble on the Utah Jazz at this point in the season. That's your problem. I think what we saw last night is the counterpoint to everyone mad about this team tanking. It's the problem is even if when they play and you play your guys, they're just a bad team. They're just not very good. So we would have had, of the 20 games that fans would probably circle and say that was a waste of a game this year, Jazz didn't do anything to compete. There's probably 15 games that look just like last night, even had the Jazz suited everybody up, that were just boring and nondescript and didn't teach you anything.
I think if they played their guys all year, I think they'd be above 30 wins.
I think so too. They have each of the last 2 years.
They'd be threatening 500, and they'd be threatening a play-in because have you looked at the records for the play-in?
Yeah, the Kings are right at 500.
So, I don't know if they're that bad, honestly. But because 15 wins is bad. I was trying to think about this. The Jazz have technically the worst record in the league. Has that ever happened in modern history? Certainly since Johnny Carl, I don't think so. Even in the last rebuild, they never had the worst record in the league.
No, and one of their big issues, this is what I wrote about on Friday night, is with their next loss, which I would imagine probably comes tonight at home against the Bulls, if they lose tonight, they will have guaranteed themselves the worst home record in franchise history.
Not a surprise. I mean, this is going to be the worst record in franchise. I mean, again, I can't. I can go back to the 80s pretty much. I don't know about, the 70s.
Yeah, like 79,
whatever.
80.
Yeah.
Those years were extremely rough when they first moved here. And New Orleans, they were terrible.
But this is a new bottom.
No, the reason they can't ever finish in the teens is because they always win 20 games at home. Always. Their worst years, I mean, again, they're going to break the record this year because they're going to have at the least 26 losses if they lose tonight at home. Say they've never lost more than 25 games at home. That means you've won 16 games at home every year. Well, 16 games is the worst teams in the NBA. It's how many games they win total. And the Jazz win that at home. So you're accidentally going to win 5 on the road, 10 on the road. And so you get out of bed with 25 wins, unless you actively try to not win at home, which is hard to do in Salt Lake. So the Jazz are going to win 2 or 3 more games the whole rest of the season, I think. One of them will probably come today or Wednesday. And, yeah, they're going to finish with the worst record in the NBA. And I didn't think that was possible even on February 28th. They were 4.5 games ahead of the Wizards. It's hard to make up 4.5 games at the top of the standings or at the bottom. And the Jazz made it up in 17 days. It's pretty remarkable. And shout out to the Wizards, who I guess decided, let's put it together in March. Because they just beat Denver on Saturday, a healthy Denver team, because Alex Sarr, the number 2 overall pick, went off. He went crazy. So,
it goes to I've complained about it forever. The last month, whatever, of the NBA season is ridiculous.
It's nonsensical. Yeah, it is.
Denver doesn't have a ton to play for, so they go into a game against Washington thinking like, oh, man, finally I can just loaf it out.
Take the night
there.
off, yeah.
I can take the night off, and I don't really have to pour it on and all this stuff. Denver just got done with a back-to-back against Oklahoma City.
Yeah, back-to-back.
Back-to-back, a road home, back-to-back or whatever it was.
I think it was road. Pretty sure it was.
Was it? Anyway, not that it matters that much. And then you've got a game against Washington. It's like, oh, thank goodness. And you lose?
You get cooked, yeah.
Because we've seen that a bunch. The Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer teams were so bad on the road, and they were so bad on the road against dreadful teams because Darren had this thing, and I blame Darren. It could be more complex than that, but it always seemed to me that Darren would go into these games and think like, okay, I can go 3/4 speed and still beat Minnesota or whoever it was bad at the time. But the problem is the rest of the team took the cue, and all of a sudden they were losing. They were just booting games to these brutal teams and had terrible road records. And it's because the other team is still an NBA team.
Yeah.
As bad as we think the Wizards are, the Jazz against the Timberwolves the last time is a great example.
Yep.
It's still an NBA team.
Yep.
So if you're missing guys and Anthony Edwards is suspended and your guys think you can just mail it in against the Jazz, you're going to take an L.
Yep.
And that's as long as they don't have teams actually making losing plays.
Yeah.
Which I hope is not happening. I mean, it's one thing to manipulate the lineup. It's one thing to play guys at certain times. But if you have guys going, oh, man, we got to lose this thing. I got to go throw it into the third row or do a turnover to lead to a layup on the other side.
Yeah.
As long as they're not doing that, teams are vulnerable to losing to even the worst teams in the league.
And I can just tell you I've never seen that happen,
I'm sure it has. But
there probably is, but I have a hard time imagining who it would be, It would have to be a team that knew it was good, that knew everybody was coming back next year and was excited to add a high lottery pick. It's like it doesn't benefit any of the players on this Jazz team outside of maybe Lowry, and Lowry doesn't know if he's going to be here next year. We don't know if Lowry's going to be here next year.
But you're telling me some coach hasn't pulled the guy aside and said, hey, you got to help us lose this thing, and you know what? I'll carve out a spot for you next year or whatever. I'll give in a good word for your next contract or whatever. I sure it's happened. I hope it hasn't, but kind of doubt it. I mean, there's just so much pressure on these franchises to lose. I mean, that's what we're watching the Jazz go through.
Of course.
And I certainly am familiar enough with. And
to be clear, neither of us is accusing the Jazz of
No, that's what I was about to say. I'm
Yeah.
certainly familiar with the integrity over there that I don't think that is going on or would ever be considered. But there's a lot of pressure on Will Hardy to lose games.
Yeah. Do I think guys loaf it when they know there's a season that's not about winning? Yes.
Absolutely.
Of course there is.
Absolutely.
That I know happens. Yeah.
But that's not, I mean, who's a good example of that? I mean, again, nobody played well last night. But Johnny Juzang, when he gets 29 minutes, he's going to get in there and play.
Of course, he's on a non-guaranteed deal next year. He's trying to stick in the league, whether it's with the Jazz or somebody else. He knows this is game film.
When VHT gets in the game, he's going to get some shots up. Although he was
shots up as possible.
He was surprisingly modest last night, I thought.
He was.
For the record, the first season in Salt Lake, they had 24 wins on the year.
Okay.
17 home wins.
Okay. What about the next year?
They had 28 wins on the year.
I mean, I remember that year where some bozo in Seattle predicted Jerry Sloan was only going to win like 8 games or something after John and Carl left. And they won 41.
Jerry took it to heart.
Yeah, Jerry took it to heart and took a scrappy bunch that had no business winning 41 games and won 41 games.
The fewest wins in franchise history looks like is what, 23, Christian? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, 2013.
In Salt Lake, anyway. What about New Orleans?
You're talking about at home, their fewest home wins? I just did this in my article. I think it's, like I said, they had 25 home losses, so they had 16 home wins. Was the fewest they've ever had. And they're not going to get close. They're not going to get double-digit home wins this year.
In New Orleans, their worst overall win total was 23-59.
Yeah. So this is going to be the worst record in franchise history by a ways.
Yeah, their fewest wins ever is 23 wins.
And rarely,
in New Orleans,
if ever, do they have the worst team in the league, a record in the league at any point, let alone at the end.
Yeah.
So this is new territory.
It is brand new. And they're probably going to guarantee themselves a top 5 pick. And then you got to hope that guy is worth doing this all for.
At some point, we can talk about the you getting gamblers in your mentions. We can talk about the new strategy that you alluded to a little bit earlier. For once, I think I actually have sympathy for the gamblers.
For the gamblers, no, I don't. But
in concept, I do. Like if you gamble on something and lose money, like I'm not.
Yeah.
I've learned that lesson before, where you lose more than you could afford, and it sucked, but it was nobody's fault but my own.
Right.
But in this case, I don't know. I'll run it by you.
Okay.
See what you think.
Okay.
All right, stay tuned. Jake and Ben will have top 3 stories of the day at KSLSports.com coming up next right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
So you think you know everything about college basketball, huh?
These people are not dumb. They're very smart.
Okay, smart guy. Time to put that knowledge to the test and go head-to-head with the Zone staff. It's another edition of KSL Sports Basketball Mayhem. Log on right now at KSLSports.com to fill out your bracket. The listener with the top bracket will receive $1,000 of cold, hard cash. And if you finish with a better bracket than... let's see here. Who can we pick on? How about Jeremiah Jensen? You'll be entered into a drawing to win $500. It's KSL Sports Basketball Mayhem, powered by Omada Real Estate. Download the free Omada app today from the real estate experts at the Stern Team. It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jacob Ben, want to remind you can win big every Wednesday on the KSL Sports Zone with Win Ticket Wednesday. This coming Wednesday, win tickets to Cody Johnson and the Leather Deluxe Tour, June 28th at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. Get tickets now at livenation.com or listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day on Wednesday for your chance to win. Time for the top 3 stories of the day. KSLSports.com, brought to you by J. Brooks Jewelers. Cherish your love with J. Brooks Jewelers. Explore their expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials. J. Brooks Jewelers. All right, Christian, where do you want to start today?
Number 1, we've got brackets coming out. I've been filling out brackets all morning.
yeah, how many you got?
Half of one.
Half of one done. Okay.
I'm very slow.
I only fill out one. I may enter it a couple of different places depending on...
But you try and keep the same one.
But I try and keep the same one. I actually don't I really don't care for the person that filled out 25 brackets.
Of course.
And then struts around the office being like, I got it
Look at my
right,
best
everyone.
bracket.
Hey, dummy, how did you do? Yeah, if I took enough stabs at it, I probably could have a pretty decent bracket too.
BYU facing off against VCU in the opening round. Utah State taking on UCLA.
2 things, Ben. 1, I thought BYU actually could have gotten dropped to a 7, so I was glad that they stayed at a 6. With that being said, I actually think VCU is a sneaky tough draw for them because I don't know a ton about VCU outside of course, Ryan Odom being their coach. We see him at Utah State. But kind of looked into him a little bit. They get after it defensively, like high-pressure defense, disruptive stuff. And that always makes things a little bit of a crapshoot because I think BYU is a superior talented team, it would seem.
Yeah.
So how do you steady, deal with the pressure, and then play your game is often kind of a wild card. And it's why teams like VCU oftentimes win a couple of games in the tourney. We've certainly seen that before. So I think it's a sneaky tough draw for BYU. As for Utah State, I actually think UCLA is pretty vulnerable. Because if Utah State can get after it themselves on defense, scoring is often a problem for this particular UCLA Bruins team. And I can't wait to see Mick Cronin lose his dang mind on the sidelines.
Yeah, that'd be great for Utah State to get that victory and send Mick Cronin into a tailspin.
I mean, the Aggies are playing like garbage.
They are. They're playing horrible.
So, yeah, I mean, if they were playing their best basketball, I'd have a little more confidence. But I don't think UCLA is that great.
Yeah, we kind of talked about how poor the Big Ten has been this year compared to some years, and it's not a great league this year, so we will see what that ends up turning into. I watched a little bit of VCU George Mason without any real critical eye on it yesterday, just because I wasn't thinking that that's who BYU was going to play in the first round. But what I know is historically VCU has a pretty good basketball program, and that area, which you're familiar with, has a lot of basketball talent.
They do. Yep.
And that's not saying that's where all the kids come from, but there is a culture of basketball in the Virginia Commonwealth area.
Yeah, and they like Utah State. They've got a great home crowd. They get a ton of support from student body, and Yeah, they've got there's a reason Odom wanted that job. I mean, it's a good job. Shaka Smart have we even heard from Shaka since he left VCU? I know he was terrible at Texas.
Yeah. Who is he? He's at Marquette now, right?
Is he at Marquette now?
He's okay.
Oh, yeah, so he's doing all right. But, like, VCU, you talk about good coach, good job, and I'm not saying that Shaka isn't necessarily a good coach, but VCU is a good job.
Yeah, it's a good job.
You can win there.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, who is it? Who are the Shockers?
Yeah, Wichita State.
Yeah, Wichita State's like another good place you can win. VCU's kind of reminds me of that same type
you
of
can
thing.
win there.
You can go and find
Creighton,
victories there.
You can win there.
Yeah, Marquette. So we'll see. BYU's playing well. They did not play well against Houston. You get really sobered up quickly against some of these teams. There was a different caliber of team. Houston is a different caliber of team, and BYU had all the momentum going into that game, and Houston was hurt and opened the game 14-0, and it was over.
Yeah.
So that was. I'm curious how BYU responds. I suspect they will, and they get to play in Colorado, correctly?
Yeah, Denver.
That's correct. So there's already going to be fans there that are BYU fans, and there are going to be fans that travel. So it will be a very blue crowd.
The Aggies are going to Lexington, so
not as easy.
Not as easy.
And then I know a lot of people like BYU's draw beyond that because they think Wisconsin's a soft team. Get past VCU first before you worry about Wisconsin. I'm not penciling anything.
You know what? Coach Lacombe didn't love that matchup with Wisconsin when we were kind of mulling this over. So I don't know. I don't know about soft team necessarily. It doesn't sound like Wisconsin. But I haven't watched a ton of the Badgers this year.
It's a tournament. It's all unpredictable.
Couple of notes. Your number ones were predictable and came out how you'd expect. Florida, Houston, Duke, and Auburn. 13 SEC teams got in.
I've got 7 of them in the Final Four, so let's see if it pans out.
And then North Carolina gets in, even though they obviously did not deserve to get in. Comparatively speaking to everybody else's resume, but got in, and a lot of people are saying it's because their athletic director was head of the selection committee.
And got an extra $100K for his team making it, which, obviously feels like a conflict of interest. And there's some relevancy locally because the conversation of the team that got left out, the biggest snub was West Virginia, a Big 12 school.
Or Boise.
Or Boise State.
So those are units that would have gone to our local schools.
But regarding West Virginia, and I remember we were talking about them needing to beat Utah in Utah to get in, which beating Utah is not a good win. They did lose to Colorado, who's awful in the opening round of the Big 12 tournament. So if you want me to lose sleep over West Virginia, who lost to lowly Colorado, I'm not going to.
Listen, I don't care about the first four. I don't.
Yeah.
I actually don't care that North Carolina got in. What I do care about is that a committee selecting anything is stupid. And it's a bunch of self-interested people in the same room, and you hope it balances itself out. But if you're telling me that the Carolina AD horse traded at a spot in the tournament, and then this is what bugs me the most, Ben, and this will get to our gambler thing too. They kind of compare in a weird way. But the AD, did you see what the North Carolina AD said? Said, well, I wasn't in the room for any of that. Yeah, I bet you weren't. I bet you weren't.
Yeah, right.
Who'd you have dinner with the night before?
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
Who you been on the phone with?
Have you never talked to any of these people? I don't think that's the case. Yeah, I wasn't there. I don't know.
I don't know. I was out of the room. I left.
Stepped out of the room.
I left. I sat down on a couch and buzzed through the latest edition of Newsweek. It was quite cathartic. And then I got in and everybody was like, hey, guess what? Good news.
We figured it out.
I hated that. Like, it's the hear no evil, see no evil thing that college sports is
it's
just.
Fake plausible deniability.
It's so gross.
Head coaches were like, I didn't know we were paying our players before that was legal. It's like, you didn't coach. Yeah, the offensive coordinator got the quarterback that you'd never met before, and the quarterback got $100K. You didn't know anything about that, though, Coach?
Clue. Yeah, sure you did.
I'm with you.
And so that bugs me. Like, I wasn't in the room.
Anyways, Thursday.
So you're telling me that you had access to everybody making the decisions for days on end, and that, for the 15 minutes they discussed North Carolina, I was out of the room. So that means that I didn't have anything to do with it? Garbage. I hate that crap so much.
Thursday, tournament kicks off. Well, technically Tuesday, right? But for the play-ins, but we'll be at JCW's.
You have BYU winning it all?
I'm going to Florida.
Everybody went with Florida. Of course you went with Florida.
I don't know. I'm not looking at anyone else's thing. I get
is the
Florida's
chic
cooking.
pick.
Well, they're playing great right now.
I might pick Duke. I don't know.
Cooper Flagg's
We'll
coming
see
back.
how Cooper Flagg's ankle looks.
They're young. I worry about a young team. Florida's not young, and they've got a good big guy, and they've got good guards.
Going to pick anybody but those two teams.
All right. Good luck with that.
Number 2, University of Utah introducing Alex Jensen today. He's holding his first press conference.
Okay, let's not call it a press conference.
He's talking.
Yeah, but I mean, a press conference implies like you have media access and that sort of thing.
Well, it
It's
is
like
open to the public,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like a big, I don't know. I mean, media will
Rally?
be there.
Pep
It's a pep rally.
What do you
like
want to call it?
Yeah, like a rally.
Yeah.
It's not really, what you would consider like he's going to sit down at some podium and be fired a bunch of questions. He'll probably answer some questions, but there's going to be a lot of cheering, and I'm guessing you're going to hear Utah man at least 16 times. Mark Harlan is going to be less angry at the podium than he was the last time we officially saw him. Actually, I have no idea if that was the last time we officially saw him, but after the football game.
Yeah.
And he's going to be saying, we got our guy, and man, are we prepared to win?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
You're going to hear a lot about the investment in the program. Financially, NIL, you're going to hear those words thrown around a lot. Season tickets being sold, interest being way up. And, that's what you do it for. That's why you bring in a new coach.
It's a fundraiser. It's absolutely going to be a fundraiser.
That's why you bring in Alex Jensen specifically. Let's see if have Andre Miller make a surprise appearance. Drop that in.
You know what they're
Do
going
something
to
exciting.
They're going to do is they're going to have two big, boards next to Alex Jensen, flanked by two big boards that have QR codes on it that says "Donate now."
They should have the little thermometer thing that looks like it moves up with as much money
Yes,
you get.
yes,
Show
like
me
the
that
fundraiser?
Yeah,
Yeah,
show me
yeah,
how much
like-
money you get.
Let's break through.
Yeah, we'll end the press conference.
We just need $10,000 more
Yeah.
from our wonderful operators are standing by.
Yeah.
All right.
They also surprisingly accepted a bid into the college basketball
It's true.
crown tournament. They'll be playing Butler.
This is hosted by Fox. It's a new thing. How many teams are there? Like 16?
In Vegas?
It's going to be in Vegas. It actually features some good teams like Boise State, who would have been an obvious top-ranked NIT team because, like you said, they were one of the biggest snubs. Boise State's going to this. A couple of Big 12 teams going, a couple of future Pac-12 teams going. But, they'll play Butler coming up. So I was surprised they are playing postseason basketball. Good for the Utes.
Well, nobody wants to buy their way into the CIT. I wonder, because Utah floating the resources to get to Vegas isn't so bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wonder how much they're getting paid or paying to be a part of this whole thing.
We'll see who actually participates because you're starting to see names trickle into the transfer portal from Utah. So we'll see.
Well, I expect that to continue.
Yeah. And I don't know if that does. I don't know what type of team Utah's going to field in this tournament.
All right, what's next?
Number 3, the Utah Hockey Club. They picked up a big win in Vancouver last night.
Hronik has it taken away by Schmaltz. Keller to center. Keller at the empty net. Scores! Clayton Keller punctuates a big win for the Utah Hockey Club.
Biggest win in franchise history.
They had to have that one. Obviously, they're trying to catch the Canucks.
Yep. 2 points back. You lose that when you're 6 points back with, less than a month to go or about a month to go.
Meaning
in the
you're not
season.
getting there, right?
You're probably not going to get there. So to stay in the race, they're 2 points back now with that final wild card spot. Again, it's hard to make up those games. It's hard to make up those points because these teams are winning right now. But they have not fallen off. And again, as I've said over and over and over, and I stand by it, these types of games are really important for the future of the franchise. I think these types of wins for Dylan Guenther, Logan Cooley has been on an absolute cooler lately, no pun intended. He's just not been good since he's come back from injury. He gets what ultimately is the game-winning goal. I think you have to face that type of adversity as a 20 and 21-year-old to figure out how to win next year. Whether you make the playoffs or not this year, you recognize the type of intensity it takes to win and the attention to detail it takes to win early on. In the year, so you're not in this situation late, and you're just seeing the guys who need to be a part of the franchise going forward, making big plays to win.
Not to mention Dennis Dodd. Yes, that Dennis Dodd is breaking hockey news.
Yep.
Dennis reported like 10 minutes ago, according to his sources, which I guess the college football world knows a lot about this.
Somebody knows, yeah.
The Utah Hockey Club has settled on a name.
Yeah.
Which I don't know actually if that's really that breaking of news that they've settled on a name. Unless they're going back to Yeti.
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, because the cooler company hosed them.
Hockey Club, the Utah Hockey Club, the Outlaws, or the Mammoth. Am I right? Those are the three. We'll see. I heard the preference from some people higher up is Utah Hockey Club. I know the fan vote was popular for Mammoth. So let's see if they go for Outlaws.
So who wins out? Well, I thought it was supposed to be a vote.
It was a vote. They didn't say that the vote was going to determine what the name was.
There was just going to be a vote?
It was just going to be an influence on what people wanted to try and read the room.
Fake democracy.
All right.
But I don't think it was necessarily like, we're going to calculate the vote and tally that up, and that's going to be the final decision. Maybe it was, but I don't think that was ever the case.
Certainly the impression I came away with.
Oh, I don't think that was
Impression is doing a lot of heavy lifting there in that sentence.
Yeah. Were you under a different impression, Christian?
I mean, that is what was implied, but as to Ben's point, they never flat out said that.
Because if that was the case, why would you do it privately?
I thought Ryan went on Armpit's show and said that.
He definitely said they're going to let fans vote on it.
I don't think he ever specifically said that whatever name wins the fan vote would for sure be the name.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know. I don't care. I mean, Hockey Club is fine with me. I certainly like the blue, whatever they got to do to hang on to that.
Yeah. It's not going to be, I don't think whatever it is going to be that drastically different from what you've already seen.
Okay, good. Yeah, terrific.
They look good.
All right, stay tuned. We'll have more Jake and Ben coming up next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Attention, please. The NCAA Tournament is here, and the Cougars and Aggies are going dancing.
Pull, fire, score!
The KSL Sports Zone will be with BYU and Utah State every step of the way in Denver and Lexington as they look to make a run in March. Hear all the play-by-play action as the Zone will be your exclusive radio home of the NCAA Tournament. From Dayton to San Antonio and everywhere in between, your home for every shining moment of the NCAA Tournament is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben nominate the U Sports Volunteer you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union, not to mention Beehive Meals. This segment is brought to you by our friends at Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255, Peach Doors and Windows. Ben, I think I'm out on the SEC in the NCAA tournament.
Okay. Gutsy?
Considering half the field is from the SEC, I can't pick them all to lose.
14 teams?
I mean, is it 13 or 14? I mean, it's something so beyond stupid.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm willing to grant maybe the SEC is the best league in the country this year because really the other leagues aren't as good. Like the ACC isn't as good. The Big Ten, as we've talked about, isn't as good. I think the Big 12 is pretty dang good, but guys like Mitch Harper would disagree with me apparently. But I think it's a PR campaign by the mouse, honestly.
Okay.
There's been so much buzz around the SEC, and you can't if you don't pay attention to such things, the Big Ten might as well be called the Fox Conference, and the SEC might as well be called the ESPN Conference. And so you see every squawking head on ESPN talking about how wonderful the SEC is, and then you see somebody like Ken Pomeroy, who I really know and respect his opinion. He's not always right per se, but he's
a method,
and he'll show you with a method. Yep. I mean, he'll show you it all and that sort of thing. But he's bumping heads with Greg Sankey because Ken isn't giving them enough love. That stuff raises a red flag to me. And not that the champ won't come out of the SEC, but that says to me that Greg Sankey doesn't even think he's as good as everybody's talking about.
2 teams in the SEC did not make the tournament. 2. And it was 3-15 LSU, I'm talking about in conference, and 2-16 South Carolina. 2 teams that were 6-12 in conference made the tournament. That's crazy.
Yeah, you can't tell me Oklahoma's any good.
Yeah, Texas has not been very good.
They're not any good.
And they have NBA talent, which is not supposed to be the end-all, be-all, but Jeremiah Fears is going to be a lottery pick from Oklahoma and had a huge SEC tournament run. And Trey Johnson's going to be a top 6, maybe top 5 pick from Texas. So there is some name value there that might generate excitement, but that's not what it's about.
No offense to the Mark Pope fans out there, but I don't think Kentucky's any good. And they got a 3 seed.
Yeah, I was surprised they got a 3. That was pretty high. They had a good early run. They tapered off quite a bit at the end. Still had some okay victories, but yeah, I'm with you.
10-8 in league? You know?
I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams with negative or below 500 in league conference or conference records got into the tournament. 8 and 10 or worse.
So yeah, I mean, Florida's a good team.
Florida's really good.
I'm not blind.
Auburn's really good. Alabama's really good. Tennessee's really good.
And Bruce Pearl is a slippery character.
He's a loud man.
I have no doubt that he's navigated
And a loud person.
the world to somehow spin it in his favor. But yeah, I'm not in on all of these teams. Not all of these teams are good. There's no way.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And by the way, it's the reason why the tournament needs to contract, not expand. Do you need to get the whole SEC
Yeah, we got to
in?
get everyone in the SEC in.
You got to get the whole Big
They
Ten
were 3
in?
and 15 in conference, but look at those losses. Look at
Hey.
who they lost to.
Great losses. Look at that league. They got to be good.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Boise State over here is playing some pretty good.
don't want to hear it.
We want to get the whole SEC in.
I'm with you. It's a hard job to figure out which of these teams is actually good. Is BYU really good, or did they beat up on a bad Big 12 conference? Or is the Big 12 much better than we think, and the SEC is much worse, and we're just giving credit to the Bruce Pearls of the world and the Floridas of the world, even though they're not any good? That's
Right.
the hard part. They only play each other.
Right.
There's some early non-conference stuff where there's a little bit of crossover, but it's less than there is more.
That's why I like Gonzaga. They play a tough non-conference league now, or schedule. Now they have to. And BYU would honestly be a way better seed if they would have played a tough non-conference, but they were in a coaching transition and all sorts of things that probably led to them not truly challenging themselves. I would expect that to be rectified. But to your point, yeah, the SEC just played it. So how good are you? I mean, we see the same thing in football where you're like, okay, well, the SEC looks like the best league, but none of these guys have played anybody except for in their league.
Right.
So I don't know. I think I'm out on the SEC.
Okay.
Maybe I'm cheering for my guy Ken Palm and not for Greg Sankey. But I'm betting with Ken Palm. He's off the SEC. Me too.
I told you I picked Florida to win it.
Not surprisingly.
They're playing as well as anybody right now. They did just win the SEC tournament. They looked quite dominant doing it. But do I have my doubts that the SEC is as good as we're pretending? 14 to 16 teams? Of course I do. Yeah.
I do not like Rick Pitino, but I like what he said about St. John's. Get old, stay old. That might be the new formula, honestly, for true victory in college basketball.
I think I had them at least in the Elite Eight. They're deep. They're good.
But if you get a bunch of 25-year-olds, they're going to beat 18-year-olds, no matter how highly touted they are.
Again, Davon Smith last year, who was Utah's point guard, who's quite good. It's like their 8th man. That's good. Have a guard who's played a lot of basketball as the 8th guy on your roster. They play 3 second-unit players. Have that guy come in and be, man the team for 20 minutes and 15 minutes, and he's not going to screw it up. That's good. Not a lot of teams have that type of have that benefit.
I want to take the Aggies to take out Tennessee in the second round.
Okay.
Good luck with that.
And then
Hot Utah State Aggies.
And then take out Kentucky in the very next round.
I might be more willing to believe they'd take out Kentucky than I am Tennessee. But
man, if Scotty G gets Christian back producing the show.
Yeah.
I am producing.
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, see, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, Saturday if they advance.
That's a W. And then they'll take out those Vols. Way overrated.
Love to see it.
Go Aggies.
Yeah.
All right, stay tuned. We'll have more coming up next. We'll talk more basketball, of course, on Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.